All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are tackling one of the most talked about, most mysterious parables Jesus ever told. It's a story about a simple fig tree that some people believe holds the ultimate key to understanding the end of the world. So, these are the words Jesus left us with. It sounds really simple, right? Kind of like something you'd hear in a farmer's almanac. But for almost 2,000 years, people have been asking, what was he really trying to tell us? What's the hidden message locked inside this little story? Okay, so here's our game plan for unpacking this ancient puzzle. We're going to start with the riddle itself, then look at the two big ways to interpret it. We'll explore the wild idea of the tree that came back to life, figure out who this generation might be, and finally ask what it all means for us today. Now, to really get the weight of these words, you have to know when he said them. This wasn't just some casual, off-the-cuff remark. This was part of his direct answer when his closest followers pulled him aside and asked, point blank, what's the sign that you're coming back and that the world as we know it is ending? So this parable was a huge piece of his final prophecy. This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is this whole thing just a general lesson about, being spiritually aware and watching for signs? Or is it pointing to something way more specific, something historic? The answer, according to the sources we're digging into, could literally change the way you look at the news. So how do people make sense of this? Well, there are basically two major schools of thought, and they take us down two very different paths. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. On one hand, you have the general view. Just be wise, pay attention, know the seasons. But on the other hand, you have this incredibly specific interpretation. It says the fig tree isn't just any tree. It's a direct symbol for the nation of Israel. And for the rest of our time here, we're going to follow that second path because it connects this ancient parable directly to modern history. So, why Israel? Where does that idea even come from? Well, the source material points to another thing that happened just a few days before Jesus gave this parable. He had let's call it a very different encounter with another fig tree. According to this viewpoint, this wasn't just Jesus having a bad day or being frustrated with a tree. No, this was a living, breathing object lesson. The fruitless tree was a symbol for the nation of Israel at that time, which he saw as spiritually barren. So by cursing the tree, he was actually prophesying that judgment was coming for the nation. And here's the direct link. The withering of that cursed fig tree was a sneak peek, a foreshadowing of the complete destruction of Israel as a sovereign nation, an event that was, at that point, just a few decades down the road. And what followed that prophecy is just historically staggering. In 70 AD, the Romans leveled Jerusalem. For nearly 2,000 years, the Jewish people were scattered all over the globe in what's called the diaspora. The fig tree was, for all intents and purposes, dead, gone. And then, against all historical odds, something impossible happened. May 14th, 1948, the State of Israel is born. For those who hold this symbolic view, this is the moment. This is everything. This is the dead tree suddenly putting out tender twigs and green leaves. A nation that had been wiped off the map for centuries just came back to life. And this idea isn't just hanging out there on its own. The source argues that a whole bunch of other prophecies seem to depend on Israel existing as a nation again before the end times can kick off. Prophecies about a final, massive war, about a national salvation, about Jesus literally returning to the same ground he left, they all hinge on Israel being back on the map. Now, if you accept that the fig tree is Israel, that leads you straight into the very next verse, which is maybe the most challenging and debated part of the entire prophecy. And here's the big problem. It really sounds like Jesus is telling the people standing right there in front of them that they're going to live to see all this stuff happen. But they all died almost 2,000 years ago, and the world didn't end. So who on earth was he talking about? Well, this interpretation offers a pretty mind-blowing solution. What if this generation wasn't referring to the disciples at all? What if it meant the future generation that would live to see the main event, the key sign, the fig tree, Israel, budding again? From this perspective, this generation is the one that witnessed 1948 and the era that followed. I mean, think about the implications here. It's profound. If this is right, it means the final countdown, the prophetic clock, actually started ticking in 1948. It suggests that the whole time span, from the budding of the tree to the summer of the end, will happen within the lifetime of a single generation. Okay, so let's bring it all home. If the fig tree is budding, If the final generation is here, what are we supposed to do with that information? What's the takeaway for us right now? And this is the crucial fine print. Jesus himself, just 2 verses later, puts up a giant stop sign. After giving all these signs, he makes it absolutely clear that no one can circle a date on the calendar. The source material is emphatic on this. Anyone trying to predict the exact day is going directly against what Jesus said. So if we can't know the time, then what's the point of the sign? Why tell us about the fig tree at all? Well, the argument is that the sign wasn't given to turn us all into prophecy nerds or code breakers. The purpose is something much, much more personal. It really just boils down to this. You see the signs that winter is ending, so you can get ready for summer, right? Not so you can predict the exact second the season will change. And in the exact same way, the point of seeing all of these signs unfold is simply to be ready, to live in a state of spiritual preparedness for whatever is coming next. And that brings this whole incredible, historical, theological journey right back to you and me. It ends not with a prediction, but with a simple, direct, and pretty challenging question. If the signs really are all around us, then the only thing that actually matters is, are we prepared?